Let's start by bootstrapping our gem. I'm inside my projects folder under Ruby, and inside I'm going to use a command to bundle a gem. First of all, if you don't have it, type gem install bundler. Be sure to check the latest version of bundler. It has many speed improvements and parallel bundling. This means it uses more than one core to install the many different dependencies for your project. So let's just wait a while until it installs. Okay, there you go. Now that bundler is installed, we need to make sure that if you were using RBM, we need to type in the rehash command. Okay, if we type in bundle-v, we will get the latest version of bundler. Now, one particular thing about bundler is that it has this command called gem. The gem command allows you to create a basic skeleton for our product. The application that I'm going to build is called Courier. It is similar to the courier name, a messenger, if you will. So Courier it is. We just need to press enter, and you can see that a bunch of different files and folders has been created, namely the Courier folder, which contains a gem file, a rake file, the default license which is MIT, a standard readme, ignore files for Git, the gem spec, and the version for our project and the main file. There's one thing that I forgot to mention. We want to create an application that actually runs in your console. Typing Courier in the console should be available in your system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this folder and start over. I'm going to type in bundle gem and pass in -b. Let's type Courier once again, and this time we will have a specific bin folder which contains our Courier binary. Okay, you can see that if we type in git status, let's jump into the Courier project and type in git status now. You can see that already a bunch of different files and folders are staged, ready to be committed. So let's do that. Let me just type in a really standard commit message. Something like this will do just fine. Let's press enter, and there you go, our first commit. Now I want to open the editor so you can see what we're up with. You can see the bin folder which contains our Courier file. This is a standard binary which simply requires the entire gem. We're not going to touch this for a while, let's just leave it at that. Next, we have the lib folder, which is the most important folder of the project. It contains the Courier file, which defines the Courier module, and then requires the Courier version. The Courier version is under Courier/version. There you go. This is version 001 according to the semantic versioning system. It's the first build ever. You can update this accordingly depending on your development. It's up to you to define the version. Next, we have the gem file, which resorts to the gem spec. The gem spec is actually right down here. Let's take a look. The specification for a gem is under this new specification object. It defines the name, the version, the author and email, summary and description, license information, and all of the files that are going to be part of this gem. It also establishes some dependencies, as you can see here, bundler and rake. We are going to define our dependencies directly in the gem file for now. Let's go to the rake file, and you can see that we already have a bunch of different tasks regarding bundler and gem publishing. Let's leave the editor really quick and type in rake-big T. This lists the entire list of tasks available in this project. We have the build command, which builds the gem, install installs it into your system, and then the release task creates a tag for your version and then publishes it to Ruby gems. So that's great. We already have a plethora of different gems available. Let's go back to the editor. We are going to create some extra folders here, just to make sure that we have a semantic partitioning of our entities. The first one is going to be a set of models. We're going to have some entities that make up for the entire business model, such as an email or a folder. we are also going to have a series of different tasks to manage how we interact with the console, such as printing out statements, asking for input from the keyboard, and stuff like that. We are also going to have a list of services. These service-like objects will perform a specific operation without actually relying on input and output. So we're going to have these three new folders. Next, let's go ahead and define our dependencies. As I've mentioned in the slides in the previous lesson, we're going to rely heavily on Thor. This will only help us when packaging the entire list of tasks. Still, we can provide it as a dependency right away. We're also going to rely on minitest, and for that I'm going to declare the minitest gem, and specifically for this one I'm going to require minitest/autorun. Let's also include the pry gem to include a debugging tool into our project. And then 3 more gems. We're going to use highline, and this gem empowers the way we ask for input from the keyboard. You will see why later on. Let's just make sure that we require this specific string. So highline/import. Next, we're going to include the colorize gem, which will allow us to print pretty output. And finally, the formatador gem. This gem allows us to print information in the form of a table. This will prove pretty great when trying to list all of the emails in our folders. By the way, I'm going to extract these 2 gems and put them in a test group. So let's do that. Okay, let's save this and type in the bundle command already to start installing all of these different gems. Let's type it in and wait for it to execute. All of the dependencies will be installed and we can move on later. Okay, you can see that yellow message here. This is a validation from Ruby gems that tells us that a to-do string is not actually a pretty description. Let's go to the gem spec really quick and let's comment the description here. We're not going to deal with that just now. I'm just going to change what's inside the summary. I'll type in fetch and send email. Okay, that looks about right. Let's type in the bundle command again and see if the error shows up again. And it does not. Okay, we can move on now. Let's close the gem spec and focus on the rake file. We want to make sure we have a proper test task. So for that, we'll require first rake/task, and then we'll declare our task. So rake :task.new, and we'll pass in a block. The block will have, for example, a pattern, which will be the pattern of all of the tests. So if I type in something like test/recursive folders_test.rb, this will recognize all of the tests under the test directory with any folder nesting, and we want all of the Ruby files with _test. That looks pretty standard. Let's also include the test folder alongside the lib folder. This will allow us to create a test helper inside the test folder, which we'll be able to require in all of our tests. Speaking of which, let's create the test folder really quick, and inside we'll create our test helper. Before we jump into the test helper, we'll need to specify a default task, which will be test. This is the default name for the test task, so nothing else is required. Okay, let's leave the editor really quick and type in rake-t, and you see rake test in there. Okay, let's make sure that the test helper works. We'll create a standard bootstrapping test. Let's create a bootstrap_test.rb. This will allow us to require the test helper and create our very first class. So let's include our test in the module, and we'll define that class. So bootstrap test, which will inherit from minitest test. Let's quickly define a method called test bootstraps the suite. All we need to do here is type in assert false so that we can pop an error, then switch it to true and see the test pass. With this out of the way, let's run the test suite, and hopefully we should get an error. But as you can see, minitest isn't provided. Well, at least it's not available in the context of the tests. So let's go to the test helper and do something about it. Let's start by calling require bundler and then typing in bundler.require. This will require every single gem in the gem file, at least the ones that are not in any group. So for that purpose, I'm going to require those in the test group. This should be enough to make the test fail. And there you go. There's our first test that's failing. Let's make sure that the test stays true, so assert true. Running the test suite, you will see that it will pass. There you go. Our test suite is ready. We can start building our product. But before we do that, jump into the next lesson where we'll start and learn about the net IMAP library. We're not going to use any tests for now. We're just going to use pry and require that library and play with it a little bit. So I'll see you very soon.